Welcome to Film at 50, a podcast that celebrates semi-centennials in the world of cinema. I'm your host, Brian Rowe. I'm very excited to welcome Andrew Campbell back to the podcast today to talk about another horror film, Tales from the Crypt, released in March of 1972. How are we doing, Andrew?
I'm doing fantastic. This movie was really fun, and I'm really excited to talk about it. Thank you for having me back. It's always really fun to get to watch these movies. I've heard of these movies before, and I'll see the references and I'll see like all these like montages, and so it's kind of fun to actually have a reason to go and watch it, because I feel like I'm the kind of person where like there's so many things on my checklist of movies to watch. So when like I'm assigned it, I'm like, oh, I have to do it because I'm assigned it, and so it's really cool to get to go and watch these classic movies that have been so monumental in film and stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of why I love Oscar season, because it forces me to check out smaller movies I might have skipped or not have seen. But if it gets one nomination, if it gets supporting actress or something, like, oh, I got to watch it now. So I've always liked that about Oscar season, having an excuse to watch a movie. If there's not, sometimes some fall through the cracks. And that's part of the reason why I do this podcast, so that I can really see everything I want to for the 1970s, at least. So it's been really fun. So you've been on 3 times before. Sunday Bloody Sunday was our first episode together. That was fun. And then Wake and Fright was a more difficult watch.
That was so traumatized for that one. That was rough.
Which I believe you opened with, like you were watching it and you're like, why did this guy pick me for this?
I was like, this one is this is
well, because it was Donald Pleasance, and it said it was a horror film, and I thought, oh well, because you said on the Sunday Bloody Sunday that you wanted to do a horror film, and I was like, oh well, let's do this one. And I was like, oh, this is a different kind of horror film than I expected, because most of these movies I'm watching for the first time, and I'm watching like sometimes, oh my god, is my guest gonna make it through? Like sometimes I'm wondering. So and then you came on for a bonus episode to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Scream. Since we recorded that, there has been a new Scream, Andrew, which what so just briefly, we got to talk about the new Scream. What were your thoughts?
Okay, so overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought for what it was, I really loved it. I mean, ranking it, it's still of course not gonna take over 1 and 2.
Right.
Even it's fun. My ranking is Scream 1, Scream 2, Scream 4, Scream 5, Scream 3. Even though I love the 5th one, I really enjoyed it. But the 4th one, I just recently rewatched it. I rewatch them all the time. I rewatched the 3rd and the 4th before I saw the newest one. And I was like, damn, the 4th one is just so good.
Yeah, it's great.
And so I had to keep it in there for that. Overall, I mean, are we allowed to spoil movie?
This will be airing in March, and so the movie's been out for 2 months at this point. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can scroll forward a few minutes, and we'll get into Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, it's just like
all right. So let's talk about which I thought was the best scene was Dewey's death scene. What did we think of that part? I thought that was the best part of the movie.
Absolutely. I definitely thought his death scene was. That was intense. The scene leading up to that was also like one of my favorite scenes, when you see Ghostface turn on his little voice emulator thing, and he starts, talking to Sam, and having that conversation of making her like choose between her sister and her boyfriend. That was so intense. Like that had me on the edge of my seat, which I haven't had in a Scream movie in a long time, because it was just like there was so much suspense about that. And then, of course, Dewey got to come in. Dewey kicked ass. Like, he was fighting Ghostface off. Like,
he was the best part of that movie.
It's my favorite Dewey of the entire series.
Yeah.
It really is.
He just doesn't give a shit anymore. And he is like, I'm taking this guy down. And living in that trailer, and Gail has left him. It felt real. Like, I was like, yep, that's probably where Dewey would have been 10 years after 4. Like, that felt good to me.
Now, I will correct, he left Gail because my brother.
That's right. He left Gail because he had moved with her, right? Was it New York?
New York.
Yeah. And he didn't like that lifestyle and so he came back to Woodsboro. Yeah.
Yes. And it's kind of funny because my boyfriend and I got in a little like fake argument yesterday discussing this movie and how he was so mad at Dewey. And I was like, no, like I love Dewey. And he was going on like he left Gail in New York after 2 months. He didn't even try. And I was like, that's kind of true, because then she moved to Woodsboro for Dewey.
You're right.
Was there for 10 years and gave up a big part of her career for him out of love. And he couldn't do the same. So I'm like, ooh, that is kind of true, but also it's Dewey. I love him.
Yeah. Did you predict that he was going to die before he died? Because I did about 15 minutes before. Because I remembered from the trailer. I remember the trailer, that shot of Courtney Cox, like her mouth opening wide and screaming. And then I remember there's that shot of her with Campbell at the end at the house. And I'm like, wait, why is it Dewey? They're going to kill Dewey. That's why, because I thought, why in the world would Sydney come back? There's no reason for her to come back. Dewey's going to die, and she's going to come back to comfort Gail. That's the only reason that Sydney will come back. So about 15 minutes before it happened, as soon as they're driving to the hospital, I'm like, yep, this is it. Here we go. So I expected it. I was like, this is happening. I cried like a baby, Andrew. I cried. I was like, oh my God, no. It was so painful to me. I hated it. And it was the greatest scene of the movie too.
It was unbelievably painful. I mean, I knew he was going to die based on the trailer. So I was like, oh, you got Gail, upset. What's she upset about?
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, maybe they're trying to trick us. Maybe they're trying to, like, why would they put that in the trailer? But I don't know. I just felt like I feel like Dewey is going to do his Dewey thing and just be courageous and just not, like, that's why Dewey's so great, is because he's not a good cop. He's not very physically strong, but he is always going to do his best and kick ass and protect people. And that's him. It's wonderful. I was a little upset the way he died. I mean, it was brutal. Like, that was fine with him. Like,
the brutality was great.
That was like awful and like really good. But I was upset that like it wasn't in a he's saving them at that moment. Like,
like sacrifice or
yes, that's what I would have wanted. I would want him to like have like let them go do their thing, and he's protecting them, and then he dies in that. I would have felt a little more. I would have been better with that.
Like, imagine if his death had been right in front of Gail and Sydney, and he was like at the end of the movie saving them or something, and they watched him die right in front of them. Imagine the emotion of that. I mean, that would have been insane. I would have been losing it.
Yeah. Oh, I did cry in the movie as well. Twice. I'm a fan twice, and I cried both times.
Yeah.
With when he and Gail are talking outside Judy's house. Oh, when they're talking and like, I think just knowing that they are a real divorced couple, and they're like they were married for several years, and
10 years, something like that.
Yeah, and I was just like, I think some of that emotion was so real, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna cry. I'm seeing it a third time soon. I think maybe I might be seeing it tomorrow or sometime this week. But overall, yes, I enjoyed it. It was super brutal. Judy's death scene is one of my favorite ones because it's so broad daylight.
That sequence is really good. That sequence of her dying and the son dying with the knife, like through the neck or the cheek. It's like, oh my God.
I was like, stop.
Yeah. So I really like parts of it. I mean, overall, when I walked out, I had this crushing sense of disappointment that I feel like I think I'll like it better when I see it a second time. The number one thing was Neve Campbell was a cameo. Like that felt like she was on set for 3 days. And I love that she was part of the end. I love that she gave Gail her moment. That was really cool when she said, doesn't Gail say something to her like, take this one, Sydney, or something? She says, no, this is yours. Doesn't she say something like that?
Yeah.
That was great. Even though we didn't get like an iconic like Neve Campbell line, Sydney line in the movie, because it was kind of belonged to Gail in that moment. So I like that. But I'm like, you know what? Even Scream 3 is pretty much about Sydney, even though she's not in 3 as much as 1, 2, and 4. But it felt kind of weird for her to not be in very much of it. That just felt weird to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, she didn't contribute much to it. I was listening to my friend's podcast and they were discussing the 5th one, and the one guy, he hated the movie, hated every bit of it.
Okay,
it was a little too picky. I was like, no, like some of these things are just like continuity things. They're like, yeah, that's true, but like it's not that big of a deal, or like maybe other stuff. But the movie could have done without Neve Campbell. Like she didn't really add too much to like the overall plot.
Right. It could have just been Gale in the last third, and Gale like, I am taking these guys down. Like it could have been without Campbell at all. I don't 100%. Know how much would have changed. Of course, it was great to see her, and she looked flawless. Like Neve Campbell is beautiful. I'm like, how old is she now? Like 46, 47, something like that. I'm like, she looks unreal.
Oh, yeah, and I love all the Easter eggs. Oh, first, yes, right. Before I even forget, yes, I was so like, as soon as she appeared on screen, I was just like, she reversed in age. I don't know how she's doing it, but she looks younger than me. I feel like I don't even know.
She looks better. Neve Campbell looks better in 5 than she did in 4. Like she looks younger and like, and part of me is like, you know what? But it works because she, like Sydney now has kids. She has moved on. She is at a really good place. She's in the best place in her life that she's ever been in this whole franchise. So it makes sense that she would look great like that. So that I buy that.
Oh yeah. Well, I liked how someone talked about she was wearing her leather jacket again because she wore like a little jacket in the second one and the third one, and this one she brought it back. Because that was one thing. I agree. Neve Campbell, Sydney did not look the best in the fourth. I mean, she looked fantastic, but I didn't like the clothes she was wearing. It was very like
kind of frumpy.
It was like she was wearing like sweatpants and a cardigan and like a tank top. I'm like, that's not Sydney. Like, it really isn't. Like, she's not. I feel like in that situation, she would have been like, I'm gonna get something on so I can carry some shit, and she's ready to go. And I was watching the fourth one recently, and she wore the same outfit 2 days in a row. Like, she wore a different thing under, like a different shirt underneath, and I was like, it was the costuming for her in the fourth one. I did not like at all, and nor did her haircut was a little. Her bangs were a little not my favorite thing in the world, but Scream 5, Neve Campbell, oh my god! Like,
but here's for me who just loves the first 4, even 3, which I think gets a bad rap. I'm not sure 5 will have as much rewatchability because I did not care for the new teenage characters that much. Like there was a section of the movie at the beginning that 10-15 minutes maybe where there's no legacy characters before they get to Dewey, and we're just meeting these teen characters, and I'm like, I do not care about these characters at all. Like there's not like the energy and the fun of the teen characters in the first Scream that we first meet. I don't know, there was just something like the casting director did a good job, I guess, with their looks, but I'm just like, I didn't have a connection to any of them, even the lead teen character who has that very weird connection to Billy Loomis, which I thought didn't work at all. The flashes of, I guess, Skeet Ulrich actually filmed that for the movie. That was I was like, okay, I see what you're trying to do, but that just doesn't work. And I didn't like the reveal of the 2 killers. That to me felt kind of underwhelming. I was hoping for something really exciting there, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's like about toxic fandom, and that girl, I was happy to see her light up on fire. That was great. I was like, I don't know. It felt like, because in Scream 4, it was the 2 younger, it was like 2 teenagers in Scream 4. It felt kind of repetitive in 5 to just have it be 2 of the teens again. I thought, no, let's get like a Billy Loomis's mom kind of surprise. Let's get like an older person, or I thought Randy's sister might. When she showed up, I was like, oh, maybe it's her.
Oh, yeah.
And then she just never came back. So I don't know. I was like, it was good. I'm happy to watch it again. I love their tribute to Wes Craven. I thought they, clearly had a respect and, reverence for the franchise. It could have been so much worse, but I'm like, it wasn't quite at the level of the first 4 for me, but I'm happy that many people loved it. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Scream 6, which just was announced this week as of this recording. More Neve Campbell. That's my advice.
I'm trying to figure out if she's even going to be in it. I feel like she's not going to be in it.
And why even bother?
I mean, I'm very excited for this new one. They start filming in like June.
I think Campbell, don't Campbell and Cox get points, or they get something with these sequels? And neither one of them, it's not like they're I mean, obviously Cox is raking it in from Friends and all of that, royalties and stuff, but I feel like because this movie was so successful, I would assume that they'll be in the next one. But it just scares me. It's like Halloween Kills, how Jamie Lee Curtis just had maybe 10 minutes in that movie. It felt they really promoted it as a Jamie Lee Curtis horror sequel, and then she was barely in it. So
yeah,
I would be surprised. Like if I were directing the next one, I would want to tell Sydney's story. I want to see her new life with her kids, and I want that to be threatened. Like that to me would be a great sequel. Like to see her not as necessarily the star of the movie, but like really focus more on her character and who she is now, because I didn't feel like we got that in 5.
Yes, so what I thought was going to happen with this one, because Neve Campbell, she comes back to Woodsboro. I thought that somehow the killer was going to threaten her and her family in some way, and she's like,
like on the phone,
obviously, and Mark, and she's married to Mark, which is great. Kincaid, and
wait, what?
They're married. So
she married Mark Kincaid?
Yes, she did. And
the guy from 3?
Mm-hmm.
And who did they say that in the movie?
And so the Easter eggs in this movie are like insane. So when she's talking to Dewey on the phone, she's like, and he's like, oh, how's Mark doing? And he's like, oh, he's doing great. I'll keep him.
Okay.
And then we can all,
oh, come on. No.
I think it is. I think it is.
No.
I 100% believe it.
Has that been proven by anybody? I think that's a coincidence. I don't think she married. He wasn't in the 4th one. Why would he have just been out of her?
I believe the directors did confirm it, because they also confirmed how Kirby is alive. Did you see about that as well? I don't.
No. I mean, if it wasn't in the movie, if it wasn't in the film,
it is. So the Kirby thing is in the film, because I watched it again and I got to see
Where do they say Kirby's alive in the film?
So in when what's his name, when Richie was watching like Stab 7, I don't know, he's watching on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
On the side panel for like recommendation, it said interview with Woodsboro survivor Kirby Reed, and there's a photo of her on the talk show.
Oh, okay.
And it is 100% legit. I saw it again,
cool.
and I was like, and it's kind of funny because I think they did it on purpose. With it was actually on the screen for 5 to 8 seconds or so.
Okay.
And so I got to look at it, and I was like, oh my god, that really does say that. That is a picture of her. This is really it. And so I think, and then the directors talked about it as well, and they're like, we didn't want to have her be in the movie because we didn't want to take away from Neve Campbell and the new cast. So they just said they wanted to tell the audience she was alive without having to have her in the movie, which is why they did it that way.
Imagine if she had been the killer. If they'd revealed Hayden Panettiere, I mean, that would have been the roof would have gone. I mean, it would have been amazing.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, it's Dennis Quaid's kid is the like, okay. And then you're like, wait, that chick killed Dewey. That chick killed Dewey. Really? Like that wasn't a tall, muscular person under there. I'm like Dewey couldn't handle her. So that kind of bothered me too after the fact. I'm like, wait, why?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because she says she killed him, right? Isn't there a part where she says I killed him? Because that's why Cox just blows her away. I was kind of disappointed that, in 4 we get Campbell saying that great line about remakes and originals, and Cox's line to the girl before she kills her is just F you, right?
Oh yeah.
I felt like that, they could have maybe tried for more than that in the screenwriting process, but that's just
yeah. Well, because
this is for Dewey,
totally
you
agree.
blah 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 would have been much better, I thought.
yeah, I wanted this is for Dewey, you.
Yeah. Something.
You
that I would have jumped up. I was ready to jump up, and she just goes F you and shoots, and I went, yeah, it's okay.
She needed a Gale line. Gale gives out the best line in the whole world. My favorite one is check your conscience at the door, sweetie. We're not here to be liked or loved. Well, that's my favorite one. Also, the we talked about favorite line of her in the opening was when the first one she was like
the one where she what can that do for my book sales? I like that one.
So it's she's such a bitch in such a great way. I love her.
So
Anyway.
yeah, I was, so as we wrap this up, I apologize to our listeners who are like losing their minds right now. Like,
I know, they're like,
I'm supposed to hear about Tales from the Crypt. I had issues with it. I was happy with a lot of it. I had like, I'm just such a massive fan of those first 4 movies that it's hard. I think it would have been hard for these guys to make anything that would have pleased me. Like, you know, without Wes Craven, I'm a huge Craven fan, and I'm like, okay. And so I'm like already like nitpicking like 10 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, this scene's kind of long. I don't like these kids, you know. So I think after a couple more viewings, I'll find some affection for it, and some of those scenes, like when she's watching Randy say to the screen, "Look behind you, Jamie," as someone's walking in behind her. I mean, there was some fun moments like that. I was like, okay, that's playful, that's cool. But so yeah, it's for me below the other 4, but it's not a bad film. I just had some issues.
Yeah, I think I liked it more the second time, and I think you will as well.
I think I'll
in general. And I think it's because what you mentioned with the new cast, I didn't feel connected the first time. However, the second time, I was
more
like,
so.
Yeah, I think there was more screen time with them than we thought. I think we were so excited. I think we were just so excited to see the new, or we wanted to see, you know, the legacy characters. We just kind of like, for me, I was like, where are they? Where are they? Where are they? I didn't really pay attention to them as much. And now I got a chance to kind of focus on them more, and I was like, oh, I mean, what's your name? The girl got shot in the head. She's pointless, like nothing. But I had a little more appreciation for Amber and definitely Chad and Mindy, I love her. And I'm excited to see them hopefully in the new one. And my last thought is that Jenna Ortega, I thought, to me, was my favorite character.
Besides the younger ones?
I loved her. I thought the fact that she survived is one the best twist they could have done.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I was like, oh, she didn't die. Okay.
Like that was
cool.
Completely changing the rule, and I was like, oh my god, like that. Like as soon as they said she was alive, I was like, oh, I already kind of love this. The fact that she's alive. I was just like, they already kind of sold me. Like that's so cool. And she got kick ass. I mean, she was messed up. She got stabbed 7 times, which I think is also a reference to the second one. Because the girl, the girl got stabbed 7 times. They say it in that, and I was like, "Oh, she got stabbed 7 times."
I did like that. They say Rian Johnson directed Stab 8. Is that right? Who directed the 8 Star Wars? I was like, okay, that's pretty clever. I like that. Yeah. But yeah. So that's our first big horror release of 2022.
Yep.
50 years ago, in 1972, we got a horror film released earlier in the year. And that was Tales from the Crypt. So had you heard of this movie before?
So I feel like I have in the past. I definitely recognize the poster, but I think I was more familiar with the TV show.
On HBO.
Yeah, from like the 80s and stuff.
Yeah, it aired 89 to 96. It aired like 7 years. It was a long time.
Yeah, I remember that. And also my first connection with it is a little absurd, but very much, I guess, something that I would just think of is that in Freaky Friday, when Lindsay Lohan wakes up in her mom's body, she's like, "Oh my god, I'm like the Crypt Keeper."
It's a great cut. It's like it's like a kind of a wide shot, not a wide shot, but the camera's kind of far away from Jamie Lee, and she says like, "I'm old" or something. I beg your pardon, Lohan says, and then it cuts to a massive close up of Jamie Lee like here on her face. And she's just like, "Oh, I'm the Crypt Keeper," which is, of course, a reference to the HBO series Tales from the Crypt, which is hilarious. We were just talking about that on Twitter yesterday about a role that Jamie Lee Curtis should have gotten an Oscar nomination for. And I had so many people say Freaky Friday because she's amazing in that. I love that Jamie Lee Curtis is the scream queen of Halloween. She's also very funny in Freaky Friday, in Trading Places, A Fish Called Wanda, and then is sensational in True Lies, a giant Schwarzenegger action movie. Her career has had so many levels to it and layers, and I just love that so much.
I do too. She is a like such a chameleon. I love her, and I mean, we all know her from that. But like, I mean, also Christmas of the Cranks. I freaking love Christmas of the Cranks. That's my.
That movie is horrible.
It's so bad. It's a horrible,
I watched it once.
horrible. it's such a bad movie, but I love it because it's just so. It's a Christmas movie, and I love Christmas, and it's like it's so bad, but I love it.
I think I gave it a half star out of 4, and you got to work hard to get a half star from Brian Rowe.
I
think I gave it a half star for Jamie. I think that was it. I was like, okay, well, it had Jamie in the lead.
Oh, her wig in that movie so bad.
It's so awful. I'm like she looks so much better with short hair. I mean, I like her hair in the Halloween films. Did you see her? She just shared her first glimpse at Halloween Ends. She's got it's like straighter. It looks a little different. It looks like she's a little bit more. She looks more polished. I think it's set 4 years later. I think that's what I read. The Ends.
Yep.
David Gordon Green said in an interview, like he said, it's set during COVID and it's like 4 years later. So I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice. Since the second one started right after the first one. So,
and you know what? And I wonder if they're gonna make any changes to the script because of the poor reviews the Halloween Kills got, because I didn't really like Halloween Kills.
Okay.
And
I liked Halloween Kills. I liked Halloween Kills more than Scream. Like I thought Halloween Kills. I thought Halloween Kills was just the brutality and that it never stopped moving. It was just like I remember just like my jaw was dropped at the kills in that movie. It was more brutal than any other Halloween movie I've ever seen. But I don't. There was something about its intensity that I really responded to, even though I recognized there were flaws. It wasn't quite as good as the 2018. But I like that. I like Halloween Kills. I'm excited to see what they do in the last one.
I am too. I mean, I don't like the way it ended, but I'm really interested to see just how they wrap it up. And also, I really loved Kyle Richards in the 2018.
Yeah, she's in the new one.
She was really good. I mean, her whole scene, everything involving her was my favorite part of the movie. And I'm excited to see her and Jamie Lee Curtis and then the
granddaughter.
Their granddaughter. I'm excited to see them team up. I'm like, oh, I'm down for that.
It's really easy to get Halloween Ends right. All we need is for the last 20 to 30 minutes, Jamie Lee Curtis and maybe Kyle Richards and the granddaughter just messing Michael up, and it ends with Jamie Lee like blowing him up or something. Because this is it. Like we're not Jamie Lee Curtis. We're done. Like they can make more Halloween movies down the road, but this needs to be it for Jamie Lee. Like, let's go out on a high note. She chopped off his head in H2O.
That's why I won again. So
we can't have it end with like him just like laying on the ground and she's like, we've done like, no, you need to like blow him up. Like it's got to be more than cutting off the head. I want to see like body parts flying every which way. That's how the new one has to end. There's no other way for it.
Yeah. I would love a nice head cut off.
Well, they already did that, so you can't do that again.
I'm excited to see the granddaughter rip her apart. Because Judy Greer, I love Judy Greer, and I was really sad that she died.
That didn't work very well. That was way too abrupt. I was like, what?
I wanted her to survive.
You know what should happen at the end of Ends is that she cuts off his head in the same way she did in H2O, and the granddaughter says, wait, no, that wasn't the guy, Grandma. Michael just swapped masks. Michael's running down the sidewalk, and she's like, "Oh, goddamn!" And then she like runs after. Like it should happen in real time. Like she accidentally decapitated the wrong guy again. But I mean, so like that is a movie. Halloween Ends, and I guess it's coming this October. Like my expectations are, she will kill him. And anything else the movie does, I will lose my mind.
Yeah.
You know? But anyway.
Tales of the Crypt.
Oh, that's okay. It's a podcast. We can just, we're just talking. If this was a very like specific like YouTube video or something, I think the audience would have checked out a long time ago.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, so Crypt Keeper, Jamie Lee Curtis. When you mentioned Jamie Lee, I just, that's 10 minutes right there.
That's where we went. That's where I'm like, how did we give them a subject?
Okay, so had you seen any of the HBO series? You're too. No, you were born in '94, right? You're too young.
94, yeah.
So unless you were watching it at like 1.
No.
I watched some of that when I was a kid, and it was really scary to me. Like because it was on HBO. It was R-rated material on HBO. It wasn't like it didn't air on NBC or something. Like it was Like they showed blood and violence, and I believe there was nudity on it and sex, and it was like, whoa, okay.
Brad Pitt was on it. I know that.
Brad Pitt was in it. Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Like early in the show, because his breakthrough
yes,
was Thelma and Louise in '91.
Yes, he was in it. Let me.
It had some stars. I think Tom Hanks directed one or two of them. Like he directed Tales from the Crypt. That's some big directors too. Robert Zemeckis directed an early episode. Robert Zemeckis directed the Christmas episode that was done in the movie we just watched with the segment with Joan Collins.
Oh, I love that. Was my favorite.
Yeah,
segment,
so that segment, which is by far, like not even close to me, like that is the best segment of the movie.
Oh, 100%.
Robert Zemeckis, who directed Death Becomes Her, Forrest Gump, and Back to the Future, he directed, I believe I read it was the second episode of the series, and he did the Christmas episode for the HBO anthology series. So
wow,
I saw it once a long time ago. I think it's a lot more violent than what we get in the movie, so I want to check that out again. But yeah, so I had seen that before. I saw this movie when I was very young. Let me tell a quick story, because when I watched this movie, I must have been 8 or 9. I don't know if it was on HBO or I don't know what I saw it on, but I watched the Christmas segment and I was like, oh, this is weird and creepy. But the next segment of the man who gets in the car accident, and then we follow his point of view as he walks home, that shot, that reveal where the camera tilts down and he's disfigured and he screams at the top of his lungs, cut to next shot, was maybe the scariest shot of a movie I had ever seen at that age when I was very young. Like it absolutely terrified me. And I never forgot that moment for years. And in high school, college, I would think about that scary moment from that movie I saw as a kid, and I never knew what the movie was, like for the longest time. And then finally, I can't remember how, I finally watched Tales from the Crypt. I think might have been in college. And then it came to that scene and I went, oh, it's this movie. So for years, I didn't know what the movie was until very much later. But watching this again 2 nights ago, I'm like, that moment still has incredible power. That is terrifying.
I jumped in 2 scenes, and that was one of them. The first 2 was the one with Joan Collins, when she was going to close the gate and his hands came through the fence.
Right.
That made me jump. I had my headphones in as well, which just made it even louder. And then it was very Halloween as well, when he was walking around. I was like, oh, that's Halloween
outside.
And when he looked down and saw his face, I was like, oh my god, like that definitely got me. But the way you described it, how like it was a moment, a scary moment that like really scared you forgot about. I
didn't know what movie it was for a while.
Exactly, and there was the one that in my head that I associate that with was in Halloween, I think 5, when the little girl,
everyone's favorite sequel, Halloween 5.
It's probably the best in the series.
No, that was a joke.
Oh no!
What is happening? I saw that last October.
Kidding.
Oh, you're kidding.
Oh, I'm totally kidding. Oh God, no! Come on.
There was someone on Twitter in October saying that Halloween 5 was the best sequel, and I had to say something. I'm like, what are you talking about? There are a couple moments I like in 5, but that movie is a mess. Like from beginning.
It's such a mess. The pacing of the movie makes no sense.
Yeah.
It was
which part in Halloween 5? Rachel?
The friend. Not Rachel, although that was really sad when she died,
gets killed
really early on.
Yeah.
But her friend, the really fun, quirky friend.
Oh yeah, like the tall, like the girl. How does she die again?
She was protecting Jamie. And and she's like, go away. And she's like holding him back, and then she gets stabbed. And it was like a really intense stabbing. And even when I watched it again, I was like, oh, like yeah, that is, because like he goes like inside like her breast, and they kind of like show it go in. And I always remember as a kid, whatever that was, it always terrified, because it really showed it. And when I watched it again, just recently, it's been decades since I've seen that movie again, and I was like, oh my god, like yeah, I just remembered how much that terrified me as a kid. I never knew what it was, and I mean, I figured it out later on, but I was like, oh my god, like I'd always done it like on AMC and stuff afterwards.
Right,
and
they don't show it.
And they don't really show it, so I never got to experience it again until this past October. I saw it again, and I was just like triggered, like, and it all came rushing back. And it's funny how like those little scary moments like really like ingrained. And the other one is the Omen when the nanny hangs herself out the window. Like those two things, like, ooh, they got me hard.
Oh, that's
As
funny
kids.
you mentioned that, because another one from a kid that really freaked me out for years was the decapitation scene in The Omen when that guy gets hit with a glass. Because I'm like, oh, because it's not like a killer chopped his head off. It was like a weird graphic accident. And those are what freaked me out, right? The idea of just being in the wrong place at the wrong time and glass comes down, or it's like Final Destination, those movies.
Exactly.
And the way that Richard Donner shot that decapitation in the first Omen was really spectacular, because it looks real. Like, it looks really great. And it's terrifying, because I think that's a character we've been kind of following most of the movie. And then he's just like, he's just done. I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, so that's another one. Ooh, I get to talk about The Omen in a few years. That's coming up.
Oh yeah, that's when did that come out?
76. So
okay,
I'll be in my 40s when we get to that one. Oh my God. But so yeah, let's talk a little bit about background info on Tales from the Crypt. So those of you who haven't seen it, this is an anthology horror film. This is one of those like early 70s, kind of like the Hammer era, a lot of like British actors, and it's got a certain style to it that American horror films didn't really have at the time. It's 5 segments, right? 5 segments. The wraparound is 5 strangers get lost in the crypt, and after meeting the mysterious crypt keeper, who does not look like the crypt keeper in the HBO show, they receive visions of how they will die, or how they died. So that's kind of the basic idea of the movie. It was based on, of course, a comics book series called Tales from the Crypt, from EC Comics. So kind of like, did you ever see Creepshow, like from '82, the one Stephen King and George Romero collaborated on? Oh man, if you enjoyed Tales from the Crypt, my recommendation for you, Andrew, will be Creepshow from 1982. That is my all-time favorite horror anthology movie. It's 5 segments, and they're all amazing. It's like really great.
Okay. Creepshow.
So yeah, Creepshow. Producer Milton Subotsky of Amicus Productions was such a fan of the comic books that he persuaded his partner Max Rosenberg to buy the film rights. The copyright owner, William Gaines, insisted on having script approval before the movie would get made. So if Mr. Gaines had not been happy with the script, this movie might not have happened.
Oh wow.
So that's a lot of power. I feel like that's a lot of power for someone who is just like, they're the comic book.
It is a lot of power.
Like, can't make the movie until I give you approval. So Subotsky wrote the script himself. The film was directed by 2-time Oscar winner Freddie Francis, who did not win his Oscars for directing. He won them for cinematography.
Okay.
So you don't see this too often. Like, Freddie Francis has this long directing career over like 20, 30 years, maybe more. And then he also has a cinematography career that lasted from like the 50s to the 90s. So very few, like, there have been cinematographers who break out and do directing, but usually when that happens, like, they'll be a cinematographer for 10, 20 years, and then they'll become a director, and then they'll just be a director for the rest of their career.
Yeah.
You don't really see them just like hopping back and forth like that. That's kind of weird. And I thought that was cool. The fact that he won his Oscars 30 years apart. 1960, he won for Sons and Lovers, and then 1989 for Glory, the film that won Denzel Washington an Oscar as well. And he also shot one of my favorite 60s horror films, The Innocence. Have you seen that with Deborah Carr, based on the Turn of the Screw? So creepy. It's so great. You got to see The Innocence. He also worked with David Lynch on The Elephant Man, the original 1984 Dune. And his final film as cinematographer was The Straight Story in 1999. And throughout that time, he was directing too. I think he directed into the 90s. His final directorial effort was a 1996 Tales from the Crypt episode for HBO.
Oh, cool.
Come on, that's cool.
That's awesome.
So almost 25 years later, his last directorial effort is an episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Wow.
That's cool.
Imagine getting to work on that episode. I just had or getting to be an actor for that episode, or what? Like, oh, that'd be so cool.
Yeah. So that's kind of a neat bookend there from 72 to 96. This kind of struck me as interesting. Filming began on the movie in September of 1971, and then the movie came out in March 1972. That's a quick turnaround.
Wow, that's how it is for freaking Halloween Kills. They're filming it right now. It's out in October. I'm like, how? Like,
Halloween Ends.
Halloween Ends, yeah.
So they just started shooting Halloween Ends. We're recording this in February. It's coming out in October. I mean, that's not that insane of a turnaround. It's like 6 months, 7 months, something like that.
I guess, yeah.
For a movie that doesn't have any, like, I mean, it has some makeup effects, but everything's practical. I think back in the 70s, smaller films especially, you could like turn them out a little bit more. I mean, I don't think they needed 14 months to edit this movie.
No, it's no Marvel movie.
I mean, Steven Spielberg shot Duel in 71. He shot his first feature film, Duel, for TV in 12 or 13 days. And then a month later, it was airing. So I guess if they could do that, they could get Tales from the Crypt in theaters 6 months later.
I guess they could.
Have you seen Duel by Spielberg? That's such a great movie. It's his very first feature. Like, he made it when he was like 25 or 26.
Wow.
And it's an action movie, basically just a one-man show, a guy in a truck facing off in the desert, and it's amazing. I love that movie.
Okay.
I'm just giving you all sorts of recommendations. That's why you come on here, right?
I know.
Have you wrecked?
I know,
Creep Show, Duel.
and I do, and I watch them, which is,
and then you watch them.
Trust your face, and then I do go watch them. Yeah, I love. They're fun.
Yeah. No, I would not give you a bad recommendation. Come on now. Let's see a couple more things. So Peter Cushing, who we're talking about at the end, he's our Beyond the Flick segment, the great Peter Cushing. His character lined up closely with where he was in real life. His wife had died recently, right before production began, and he was depressed while on set, I guess, filming this movie. He was kind of depressed. He just lost his wife. His character, of course, in the movie is a widower who's using a Ouija board to talk to his dead wife. Does that add anything to that segment? I mean, that's kind of interesting.
I mean, it did just now, I guess. I never knew.
Like,
that's so heartbreaking. Well, you know what? Actually, I didn't know which character Peter Cushing was when I was watching it, and then I had to look it up afterwards.
Oh, did you? While watching the film, you didn't know who that person was?
No, because I thought when I had read it that he was, because what's his name, Mr. Something. Where's his name? Grimsdyke.
Okay, yeah. Some of the names in this movie are kind of.
For some reason, I confused that with like the Crypt Keeper.
You thought he was that guy?
I thought that was him.
Okay.
And I was like, he had not much part. And then as I watched, I was like, oh, he's him. Okay. And you know, the thing is, he broke my heart. I felt so bad for him. I mean, and it's kind of funny that, like, you know, that was a character of the actor you want to focus on, because he was the one I was most drawn to.
Right.
And because his whole storyline is so heartbreaking now, knowing that like it kind of emulated his real life.
Yeah, I'd read that piece before I watched it, and it had been a while since I'd seen this movie, and that, for me, that was like the most emotional part of the film, was his segment, because knowing of his real life loss of his wife, I was like, wow, that's really courageous of him to play a role like that right after that happened. You think he would have been like, I'm good, guys, I'm gonna take a pass on this one. Maybe he'd already signed the contract. I don't know.
I wonder if, because he had a photo of his wife on the table. I wonder if that was his real wife or not. Like,
probably not. I would be surprised. Maybe not tasteful. That he's talking to like the picture of his real wife who died, like in a scene for a fictional horror film. I don't know. That might have been too. He probably would have been like, no, we're good. Just give me a stock photo.
I mean, if I was the director, I'd be like, hey, go get a picture of him. Never.
So this was interesting. Only 2 of the 5 segments in the film are from the Tales from the Crypt comic book. So I'm like, wait, why did William Gaines need script approval if they're not even using all of his stories? That's kind of weird. So producer Milton did not own a run of the original comic book, but instead adapted the movie from 2 paperback reprints. So not everything in the movie comes from the original comic books. So, I mean, I don't think in the long run, that matters that much. But since I don't think a lot of people know the comic book now, but I thought that was interesting. As I said, Creep Show is a movie you need to see. Stephen King and George Romero considered remaking this movie before they decided to do Creep Show. So 10 years after Tales from the Crypt, 1982, they make Creep Show, which is mostly, most of the segments are kind of based on Stephen King's work, or at least kind of collaborating with Romero. And That one was kind of more their thing. So I'm kind of happy they went in that direction. If they had just remade Tales from the Crypt 10 years later with different stories, I don't know if that movie would have been as good. I like that they kind of went their own direction, because George Romero, of course, he's the director of Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, just a great filmmaker of those zombie horror films that we all know and love. And that's my other favorite film of his. He directed it, and Stephen King is in it. Stephen King has a great segment in it as a lead character, and which you have to see. It's the second segment. It's fantastic. And he also, did he write the whole thing? I don't know if he wrote the whole thing. I think he did, but he was a big part of that creatively. So a year after Tales from the Crypt came out, there was the anthology horror film The Vault of Horror from 1973, which was also written by Zubowski. The novelization of Tales from the Crypt, the movie, can be spotted in a scene in The Vault of Horror. So I have a Blu-ray. It's a double feature Blu-ray, Andrew. It's Tales from the Crypt and The Vault of Horror. They're very similar. They're very connected. They're both anthology horror films. Okay. And I mean, it's basically like a sequel in a way. I mean, it's very closely connected. So we might talk about that next year, The Vault of Horror.
I've never, and out of curiosity, before it passed my mind, which of the two tales were from the comic books that they did in the in this movie?
Oh, I didn't look that up. I think the Christmas one has to be, right?
Okay, I'm assuming it's the best one.
I think it. I'm just guessing. I'm thinking probably the Christmas one and the Cushing one. I think the second segment, which I think is great and scary, that would made me think of. That made me think of like just old folklore stories. Like I have the scary stories to tell in the dark. Like there's a very similar story in that book to what happened. Like it opens with a guy looking at a car on fire, and then he walks home and his wife or girlfriend screams in his face. It's like the same story from like that old folklore book.
Okay.
So I don't think the second segment, and then Monkey's Paw is a famous story.
Oh yeah.
That I don't think is based on a comic book. So I would guess it's 1 and 3.
That makes sense.
Yeah. If I was a betting, but who knows? I don't know. All right. The last thing I have. Yeah, go for it.
I was not like, which was your least favorite segment?
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about.
Okay, we're talking about.
Cool. I just had one. I just one more piece of trivia. So did you know there are 2 feature films called Tales from the Crypt that came out in the 90s?
I did not.
Okay, so get this. I gotta share this. This is hilarious to me. Okay, ready? So the HBO TV series aired from 89 to 96, amounting to 7 seasons and 95 episodes in total. I'm kind of intrigued. Wow. I'm like, I haven't looked. Does HBO Max have Tales from the Crypt? I didn't look before I started recording this. Like, I would love to watch. I want to watch the. I want to watch the Christmas one that Zemeckis directed. I want to kind of compare the two. I think that'd be fun. So there were 2 theatrical feature films called Tales from the Crypt in the mid-90s. The first one was called Demon Night in 95. The second one was called Bordello of Blood in 96. I have vague memories of watching Bordello of Blood on HBO, I want to say, like in 97, 98, somewhere around there. I don't know if I've seen Demon Night. I feel like I would have seen it, but it's not coming to me. I can't remember. So that's crazy to me, Andrew. So there's 7 seasons of this show, and then they make 2 theatrical feature films. But that's not all. There was also a game. There was also a game show called Secrets of the Crypt Keeper's Haunted House, and a cartoon series for kids called Tales from the Crypt that aired from 93 to 99.
Wow.
Which I have never heard of until yesterday doing my research. I'm like, there was this cartoon series, Tales from the Crypt, that aired for 6 years. Like, how have I never heard of that
either?
Like, I was a kid in the 90s. I loved Goosebumps and horror. Like, how did I never see that? Did it air on like a Canadian station or something? Like, how do I not know this? I have to see it. Maybe it's on YouTube.
I would have loved it as a kid.
So that's all my trivia. Did you have anything else that you researched?
No, there was it was funny because when I was watching this, 2 of the things that once stood out was Joan Collins. I only knew of her from American Horror Story.
Right, she was in a recent season. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was in the
one where they're like in the bunker.
Oh.
Yeah,
and she was so good. I love. My mom was like, "Oh, Joan Collins," blah blah. I was like, "I don't know who she is," but I could tell. When I saw her, I was like, "Oh, she's a Hollywood star." Like I was like, I can tell that she was like someone big. And I loved her in it. Oh my God, she was so good in American Horror Story. But it also made me think of season 2 of American Horror Story with or at least her scene with the Santa Claus, the Santa Claus killer guy in American Horror Story. In the season 2,
Right.
they have like a 2-part episode about a man who's dressed up as Santa Claus and would go to his house and kill them, which I'm sure is completely directly related to Tales of the Crypt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that was some brutal 2 episodes. Those are so good. I forgot the man who played the Santa Claus killer guy, but those were fantastic episodes. So as soon as I saw that one episode, I was like, oh, 2 American Horror Story references for me, at least right now. But because her segment, and it's so funny after I watched it and seen because the brooch that she got, kind of like, oh, she dropped her brooch and she picked it up. I was like, well, that's gonna mean something later. And then that was the brooch that she got in her box, and I was like, oh, I'm confused. I was like, these are like tales of, like, something that might happen in the future, because that's what he was told, right? Like, or what you think at first.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like, oh, maybe it's like a weird parallel universe, and that's why she is getting the brooch that she already has. But then in the ending, of course, I'm like, oh wait, she got it that day, and that's why she still has it.
That was neat to see, because I don't think many people think of Joan Collins as like a horror film person. So I think like, unlike Peter Cushing, who's very well known for decades of horror films, like Joan Collins is not necessarily that. But I love that we have this piece in Tales from the Crypt, and then decades later she shows up in American Horror Story. I'm like, oh, I bet Ryan Murphy has seen Tales from the Crypt, right? Like, that would make sense to me. I think this movie's pretty famous because of the HBO series. That title is so famous. I think a lot of people discovered the 72 movie later. Even if you haven't seen the 72 movie, like, the title, Tales from the Crypt. So a lot of people, I think, have seen it. They saw it much later.
Well, and what's funny, actually, because when I watched, I didn't know it was a TV show before I watched it. I've always heard of Tales of the Crypt. I never knew what it was exactly.
Okay.
So I didn't know if it was a TV show or a movie, but now I was like, oh, it's the movie. And then I was like, it feels like I'm watching a TV show, because I've never seen really an anthology movie where it broke down to 5 segments. I've never seen a movie like that.
Oh, you've never seen that before? You haven't seen a film that's like 5 stories in one?
Well, not really. Not in a. I mean, not really. And then I'll like talk like I have a one that I would pair it with. But and then I kind of, okay, oh, this was a TV show, and it lasted 7 years, right? Was it 7 seasons? It
lasted 7 seasons.
7 seasons, okay. And I was like, well, that totally makes sense, and because I mean, I would totally go back and watch it, because it's like episodes, I'm sure, like 30 minutes each, something like that, and I mean, it was very entertaining. And I mean, I was very surprised by it. I did not know where this movie was going to go at all. But I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I mean, I really sat down and watched it and was like, wow, like, this is, I hadn't seen, this kind of segment before. And it was surprising. And I feel like it's also maybe even more relevant for audiences now, because I feel like our attention spans are so short anyway now, that having something where like the movie is a bunch of different side movies, like, you just kind of get a quick story in and you're out, and you're like, oh, cool. Like, what's the next one?
It's like a short story collection. It's like dipping your toes into a scary story here, a scary story there. Not all of them are going to be great. Usually one's better than the other. But I've always really responded to anthology films. They really don't make it for other genres. It's mostly horror films they do it for. I've always really enjoyed them. There's a great one from the 40s called Dead of Night. Really creepy, like, ventriloquist story in that. And like 40s, not a great decade for horror films. It's basically like the lesser Universal monster movies decade, but Dead of Night's really good. So there's a lot of great anthology horror films I would recommend. This one, so let's get into our thoughts on this movie.
Okay.
This one falls short for me because I think segments 4 and 5 are not very interesting. And if you're going to not bring it, you don't do it on the last 2 segments. You bring it on at the end. Like, you don't start with this great, fantastic Christmas horror segment.
God.
And then the second one is pretty short. has that terrifying moment, and so that one works for me. And then the
Mhm.
third one, I think it's not really scary, it's mostly more emotional, although that reveal of the corpse in that room is really scary when he's like got that giant teeth and he's staring at the guy. And then so what happened was I put this movie on really late 2 nights ago, and I was kind of tired. I'm watching it, I'm loving it, and then I kind of faded in and out of the last two segments. And yesterday,
Yeah.
I thought, oh, well, I just must have been tired. So last night, I put on the last 20-25 minutes just to watch it again. I'm like, oh, no, it wasn't that I was tired. It's that they're kind of boring.
They are boring. Yeah, they are. And so the very last one, so the last two ones, that was the man and his dog, and then the
So
man who ran that. Oh, no,
the fifth one is about
that
that painting. That painting falls on that guy. And the fourth one was the monkey's paw, right?
The painting.
Wasn't there a painting, or did I dream that? I wrote about a painting. Bearded man dies when painting falls over on him, kind of like Dorian Gray. I wrote down. Did I dream that? Is that not in the movie?
I don't think that's in the movie.
Oh, okay, so that must have been a dream I was
having. Okay,
about a bearded man.
So we got the first Joan Collins, great, and then the second one was the car accident.
It had to have been in the movie. I would not have written that specific of a note. It's very specific.
Okay.
This is how memorable the last 20 minutes is of this movie, because I can't even remember if that's a thing. But
okay. I'm like, oh my god, like did it skip one? Because I watched it on YouTube. But it was the full movie for sure. Joan Collins, car accident.
Did I send you a link to only 80% of the movie?
Well, I will say you sent me a link to the wrong movie.
I did.
It was like Pink Flamingo, something. A flamingo. I'm not quite sure what it was.
Oh my god!
I don't know what that was.
That was the last. That was the last episode I did. Oh, I'm so good about that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
You're totally fine.
Okay.
I was like, what movie am I doing? But then I was like, oh no.
Pink Flamingos is a whole other kind of horror film. Trust me. You want to see something really wild and crazy? Pink Flamingos. So yeah, but regardless, I'm gonna look it up here in a second, just so I'm not just going completely out of my mind, because I would not have written a note that specific if it wasn't in the movie. Like the fact that I said he's an old bearded man who dies when a painting falls on him reminds me of Picture of Dorian Gray. Was it in the fourth segment or the fifth segment? Okay. It's one of the last two. What does it say? What is it? Read me the synopses of segments 4 and 5. Like, what does it say online?
That one. Joetic, Poetic Justice. That's when the guy, the Valentine's Day guy, wish you were here. Okay, Lord's office costs money. Okay, this was the monkey's paw one. So that's
monkey's
4.
paw. Yeah,
like
about the wishes. What did I say about that one? Nothing. I didn't say anything specific about the fourth one. Just said it was kind of slow.
Wish you were here.
This is
blind now. So that's 5. Yeah, so it was.
There's no painting.
There's no painting in these. No, there's not. I'm sorry. I mean,
maybe you know what? Maybe I fell asleep, woke up, and then like YouTube had gone on to a second like 70s horror film, and I just watched that for 5 minutes before I fell asleep. Like that's the only thing that I can think of, because I would not have dreamed that. That's very strange.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I'm really nailing this episode. Andrew. Talking about Scream for 85 minutes, and then I can't even get the details right. So regardless, 4 and 5, the segments 4 and 5 have issues. The actors in them kind of blend together for me. There wasn't anything like really memorable. Like it needed like a Christopher Lee or a Donald Pleasance or someone like really that we know who I think could have really done something there. Because I feel like we get like especially Joan Collins in the first segment and then Peter Cushing in the third are just so like such great actors with amazing faces, and we immediately respond to them. There was just kind of like this blending of people in the fourth and fifth segments that I couldn't quite get a handle on. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we needed I mean, maybe like another female actress in it or actor.
Yeah,
in it because,
why not another great female lead performance in one of the last two segments? That would have been good too.
Yeah, because I feel like, or at least maybe rearrange the way. I mean, having her first, I think, was a good idea because it was so good. And maybe in the second one, I think the fast-paced one, and then maybe like the monkey paw after that, and then maybe throw in the the better one with the Peter Cushing at the end, like in the fourth one would have been fine too. And then maybe a boring one to end it with. But yeah, I definitely faded out during the last one. I mean, I did the whole mace thing was cool in the razor blade.
Yeah, that kind of reminded me of Raiders of the Lost Ark, like Indiana Jones at the end. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was okay, and yeah, I like that one. The whole monkey paw thing, I was like, okay, well, it's just the monkey's paw again. And yeah, it was. The final two were definitely not as interesting. I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, I guess they don't want to make them all super similar. But I mean, you could have at least done, maybe a familiar face or maybe an actor you're more drawn to, like you said. They would have been, it made the story a little more interesting. Because the one with the blind men, that I felt like that dragged on for way too long. I was just like, this kind of like, let's just get it over with. Like,
it just didn't have. You need to end with these anthology movies. You have to start strong. You have to end strong. You're going to have one or two segments in the middle that's a little weak. If you don't end strong, it kind of takes it out for me. So this didn't have that. And part of it was I watched a really great anthology horror film last year for the podcast called The House That Dripped Blood, which had Peter Cushing, which had Christopher Lee, and it had 4 segments and a great wraparound story. Everything worked in that. All 4 segments were fascinating. Like one was about a writer, and it had like about creative people, and they were scary and they were entertaining as hell. One was a vampire story, and it just moved really quickly. And it was like the fastest, I think I said on that episode, that was the fastest 90 minutes I've had on this whole podcast. Like it just flew by. I loved every minute of it.
And what was it called again?
It's called The House That Dripped Blood. If you liked Tales from the Crypt, like anthology horror, like if you want to see something that came out around the same period that I think is better, The House That Dripped Blood would be my recommendation. Okay. Also with Peter Cushing. And so so that's a really good one.
Oh, and Christopher Lee as well.
Christopher Lee is in the 3rd segment. The weakest of the 4 segments is the Christopher Lee. I remember that one drags on a little bit. I think that was my least favorite, but I still liked it. And then the other 3 were great. And the very first segment is phenomenal. Like it was some of the best horror scenes of 25 minutes, whatever that was, that I had seen in a while, especially for the podcast. So cool. That kind of set a high bar for this genre of the anthology horror. And so this one, I was so into it at the beginning, and then it just kind of dropped off for me towards the end. Yeah. To the point where I was starting to hallucinate and imagine other scenes, apparently.
Yeah. I think you're like, you know what this needs? This needs a painting falling. That's what this movie needs.
I mean, it doesn't help that. It doesn't help that I write notes on every episode that I do for this podcast. And I wrote something that I looked at the next day that made no sense. You want to hear this is what I wrote, Andrew. I wrote, the house train took an Oscar, as did anyone who refers to it.
The house train took an Oscar.
The house train took an Oscar, as did anyone who refers to it. That is a note I wrote down as I was fading in and out of consciousness. So I have a new YouTube channel. I break down Oscar races. I'm thinking maybe like I was like in the middle of a dream or something when I put hand to paper. So yeah, I apologize, listeners, if you think I've completely lost my mind. But I do think I have the authority to say Tales from the Crypt is a solid film. Yeah. Stay for those first 3 segments. I really enjoyed. I loved everything about that Christmas segment. Like I loved it almost the whole time. We're hearing these old-timey Christmas songs over this kind of this creepy vibe. What I loved about it the most was that the villain of the story is being stalked by another villain. That was kind of creative, right? Because
I loved it. Yeah.
She kills her husband, right?
Yeah, she killed her husband.
That's
Yeah,
her
she killed
husband.
her husband in the beginning. Yeah, because it was for money, I believe.
For money. So she is like this horrific character who's being pursued by another horrific character. That's something you don't see very often. I thought that was
cool. Never. And you know what? That whole aspect of it reminded me of that movie I Care a Lot with Rosamund Pike.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, I was like, she's a terrible person who's also being terrorized by a terrible person.
Yeah.
And
that's what's so great about it.
And I was like, am I? But it's but I was still rooting for Joan Collins, and I was like, I kind of want her to make it out of this, even though she's a terrible person. And that's how it was like with I Care a Lot. I was like, Rosamund Pike is bad, but I don't want her to get killed by the mob people because I'm so interested in her that it's like. It's almost like, you know, like the Joker in a way. It's like you were so interested in him in Dark Knight that you don't really want him to get like messed up.
It's like when you root for Anthony Perkins in Psycho after he's killed Janet Leigh and he's putting the car in the swamp and the car just sits there for about 10 seconds and he kind of looks panicked. We as the audience want the car to keep going down. Even though she was the hero in a way of the story so far, and he is the bad guy. I mean, I guess I guess if you're watching it the first time, you don't know that he killed her. You think it's Mother, so I guess maybe that's why. But there is like a devilish nature to him there that he's like just putting her body in a car. Why are we rooting for him in this moment?
Exactly. Well, did you watch Bates Motel as well?
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite shows of the last 10 years. That show was amazing.
Oh, so good. And we think we know the story of, you know, Norm Bates and everything, but like
kind of the
and he, like you really want him to get away with the. I mean, as awful as it is, you're rooting for the villain, and it's like because you want him to get away with all these horrible things that he's doing. But it's so interesting, when those movies kind of with this one especially with Joan Collins, like she was so like. Like I was like, you're so invested in her right away, and then like you're like, oh, I don't want her to die yet. I want to see what she's gonna do next. Like I want to see her plan. And
like honestly, in some ways, I think I would have liked Tales from the Crypt more if the whole movie was just her story and that's it. Like if the whole thing, 90 minutes was a Christmas horror film, we had a longer setup, and then she kills the husband, and like it's like an hour of that night of her being stalked by Santa. Like if that had been done well. Like with a really skilled like action horror movie director, like that could have been incredible.
Oh yeah.
I mean, maybe it might have been too much to stretch that out to 90 minutes. Maybe it would have been too much, but 80 minutes, maybe.
Maybe even like at least extra 10, 15 minutes of that segment would have been off. Like, cut one of those other segments.
I think, I mean, if I had done this, I would have made the movie 3 segments and had it been the first 3 segments just kind of expanded. Like, I don't know. There was much in the segments 4 and 5 that was there an image or a standout moment in segment 4, the monkey's paw one, that really I'm trying to remember if there was a moment in the 4th segment that stuck with me in any way.
I mean, I didn't like any of the wife drove me freaking crazy. It was like, woman, stop, stop. So be like, I want my husband to then and live forever. It's like, why would, you idiot, did you not, you be very specific on what you need. If you say he's going to live forever, he's going to live forever no matter what. Mm-hmm. And they drove me crazy. And then it was I was like, damn, this guy's he's in all this pain because of the embalmment, which I thought was actually kind of an interesting aspect I threw in there. Because I mean, the way he died right before the accident, but he was embalmed now, and so now his body's and he didn't die, and then she live forever, and then he's living forever, and you're like, oh, well, that's an awful way to live the rest of your life. But I can't think of anything that really stuck out. I was more so annoyed with his wife, and I was like, please shut up and stop messing up. That one was pretty quick though. That was a pretty quick segment. The one with the man and his dog though, that took on for too long. I got bored of it. But then of course the whole Mace thing was pretty messed up. But overall, I was like, I would think I would maybe have liked to see the last one be the Peter Cushing one. I think that one would have been a fine one to end off on because it was
Right.
good.
Mhm.
And you felt really, I really felt for him. And
Yeah.
he lost his dogs and all, like that's a terrible person.
Yeah, that was a sad scene when they took the dogs. Mhm.
Yeah.
He kept one, right?
Yeah, one had run off, I guess, for like
Mhm.
in a field, and then came back that night, and you gotta hang on to him.
Always animals with you on these episodes, huh?
You know what? I meant to bring that up. There's two things I meant to bring up. Yeah,
The dog and Sunday
something
Place.
involving animals. I'm like, dogs either get hit by cars, and it looks really, and the dog looks dead, or the kangaroos,
Or pursue the kangaroos. Now they're taking it. Yeah, that is interesting.
Well,
is there a dead dog? And we did talk about Scream out. There's not a dead dog in Scream, right?
No.
But that didn't count. That was a bonus episode. Doesn't count. So of the 3 regular episodes we've done, we've had a sad scene with dogs.
It's funny. There's a flashback to when you're discussing like scenes in movies that you forgot where it came from. One of mine also was in that movie Fear with Mark Wahlberg when he puts the dead dog's head through the door and drops it.
Oh yeah.
That scene, I remember as I saw that sometimes as a little kid, and that messed me up. I hated that. And then I watched it again, and I was like, oh my God, Mark Wahlberg is so hot in this. But I'm like, oh no, he's a psychopath. I can't.
Yeah, that was like Reese Witherspoon's.
That
was Witherspoon's like first foray into like more adult material because she'd been a child actress for a few years. That was like her first like adult role in a way. I watched Fear recently too. Fear is fun. Like it's a good kind of a fatal attraction teen romp. It's not great, but Wahlberg's really fun. Like the end where like he's at the house and duel to the death. Like that's a good one. It's a fun watch.
And Amy Brennan's in that too. And I love Amy Brennan so much. And because she plays the mom. I'm rewatching The Leftovers right now with my roommate.
That's a great show.
Which, oh my God, it's my favorite shows ever. And I'm watching again, like, oh my God, like it's so
it
good.
Is
a lot of loose ends, but
The Leftovers, that first season, there were 3 episodes I want to say were just focused on one person, right? And that episode that focused on Carrie Coon, the one she goes to like that sales conference or something.
It's called Guest. The episode's called Guest. I remember the episode because it's so good.
Where her husband and 2 kids were all taken, right? And like she and then they show that moment. I don't. Maybe that's not in that segment. Maybe it's in the last episode.
Oh, so that's the second to last episode.
The part where she walks in and she sees the dummies.
The dummies.
They like put the dummies in where the kids were and the husband were when they were taken, and her reaction to that, I'm like, how did that performance not get an Emmy award?
Right.
That was where I noticed her.
That episode,
I was like, who is this actress?
Yes. 100%.
Oh my God.
And it's funny because My Favorite Murder, they discussed Carrie Coon and how like that's how they like and The Leftovers, she's just so good. And like because her episode, it's episode 4 that I'm excited to watch again because that's when it's her segment. You get to see
the one where she like isn't like at a bar.
Conference.
Doesn't she go to a bar and she like lays into someone, like she screams in their face, and I'm like, this is on another level right now. This is amazing.
It was the guy who wrote the book about like kind of moving on, like what's next.
Okay.
And she lays like, what do you mean? Like you lost these people and you're fine? And it's because he was hugged by Holy Wayne, so he doesn't really have any grief. So and they're like, oh shit, that's why he's kind of like,
but she's great.
Okay.
She was great in Gone Girl and The Nest. Have you seen The Nest? I mean, speaking of a movie with a sad segment with an animal. Oh my God, what's The Nest with a horse?
I want that.
Yeah. She's got this horse who she has to put down. Oh my God, it's just like it's brutal. It's a tough movie, but she's amazing in it. And then she's also breaking into like she was in Ghostbusters and like. So I'm just happy whenever she shows up.
Now.
She's in something now.
New show. Yeah, she's in.
The Gilded Age. The Gilded Age on HBO. With Christine Baranski.
Yes.
Which I have to watch. I saw that just the other night. I was looking at HBO Max. I like to look under Just Added, and I saw that, and it was like Carrie Coon and Christine Baranski. I'm sold. I'm watching that one. What were we talking about?
I love it. We're talking about Fear, and that is with Amy Brennan. And how much I love Amy Brennan.
Amy Brennan, yeah. She's great too. I love that actress.
Yeah, she's so good. Well, I like her in Judging Amy a lot. And then
I have I've always a soft spot in my heart for 1995's Bye Bye Love. Which when I was 11, I would just watch. That was one of those, like, when I was 11, I would, for some reason, watch that a lot on HBO. Janine Garofalo in that movie is hilarious. But okay, so let's a few more things about Tales from the Crypt. So yeah, you were talking about the segments. If the movie were these 5 segments, I would open the same with the Christmas. I would maybe do like the 4 segment number 2, and then do the creepy one of the guy who gets in the car crash and sees his.
Yeah,
that would have been a great middle one. We go to 5, and then we end with 3. I think ending with 3, and that shocking reveal of the pasty white corpse with the giant teeth at the end. Yeah, that would have been a great end to the segment.
Absolutely, yeah. So that would have been really good.
And so all they needed to do was just edit it. Maybe they needed like an additional month. If instead of it coming out in March of 72, April 72, they could have sat around, a few people could have been like, the end 2 are kind of weak. How about we move them up? And then would have been better. I feel like,
because it wouldn't have been too much. Yeah, I mean, it maybe have reshoot, for a day. But
maybe.
I mean, if you even had to reshoot anything, I mean, they could have made it in a way to where they just it kind of worked.
Reshooting is tough. I don't like reshoots. I had to do some back in the day. So whenever you don't have to reshoot, it's a good thing.
Oh yeah. Oh god, I did some reshoots once on our 20-minute film class, which was just awful. And oh my god, having to do the reshoots was the absolute worst, because our director that we had, this guy, he was such a little. Oh my god, I can't curse. None of your.
So you were an actor in this, or you were the director? What was this?
So with this, I was the editor, but I wanted to do I wanted to be in the production of it, because I wanted to be able to know what's going on. And I just want to be a team player, and I knew how much everyone hated the guy that was directing it, because he was so know-it-all, and he was the worst. He was so rude, and then we were filming stuff. We're like, hey, we need more light, this. We need more light. It looks really dark in the camera. Blah blah blah. And he's like, no, I know my camera. This is fine. It's fine. Blah blah blah. And then we bring it to our professors, and they're like, it's pitch black. You guys need to redo all this. And we're like, we know. He wouldn't listen to us, because he was just he's like, I'm the director. I know what to do. And it's like, no. Okay. And we're just like, but we're also people with eyeballs and know that we can't see this right now. And he was like, no, it's fine. I know my equipment. I know what I'm doing. Okay. And we had to redo all of it. And I ended up I had to direct the second half of it, because he was just too busy with his internship at ESPN and all this stuff. He was the worst.
So something I've been meaning to ask you, I keep forgetting, but I finally need to ask you this. So my partner and I have been watching this show, The Resident, for many months. Do you know of this show, The Resident?
It's like the doctor show, right?
The doctor show. It's on what channel is it on? ABC? No.
I thought it was Fox.
Maybe it's Fox. It's Fox. Yeah.
Okay.
We've been watching. We're about 5 seasons in, or whatever it is. We're getting close to where the new episodes are airing. But there's opening credits every time. There's a Andrew Campbell credit.
Oh, really?
And some of them are written by. Some of them say written by Andrew Campbell. And I know it's not you, but I just in my mind pretend it is you.
Okay. Well, I mean, you could. I could never write a medical show in the day of my life.
You can't get that technical jargon just right.
I'm just like, oh, push one of Epi. That's all I wouldn't even know. I was like, every episode, guys, just push one of Epi and clear and charge a 300. That's all I got, and that's all that we would be saying.
But were you aware of that there's a major, an influential creative figure on a major show like that?
I didn't. I know that there's a character named Andrew Campbell in Pretty Little Liars.
Okay.
He was a character. He's really cute in it too. And I was like, thanks guys for comparing me. He's like 6'5". I was like, oh wow, I wish I was.
Tall drink of water.
I also think he was like a teacher that would sleep with a student, and I was like, oh, that's gross.
Yeah, we don't go there.
But But his name was Andrew Campbell. People would always like, oh my god, like Pretty Little Liars. I'm like, no, stop it, it's gross. But that's cool. Yeah,
so yeah, you should tell people, you should start telling people like, oh, have you seen my show, The Resident? You know, I write for that.
And they honestly, I really could.
You live in LA, people would believe you. You live in LA.
Yeah. If I'll use it. I mean, I have my boyfriend, but I'll use it as a pickup line one day at a bar. I'll be like, all right, the show comes on. I'll be like, hey guys, look.
Hey guys, oh, there's my credit. But no, I think the name Andrew Campbell comes up in the opening credits every night.
Okay.
And then sometimes it's written by, like, he's in the writer's room too.
Go me, okay.
So yeah, we'll just pretend that's you.
Cool.
But yeah, reshoots. I had to do reshoots on a college film once. I shot like almost a whole day, and the sound wasn't good. And I had to go back like a week later with the same actors and do the whole thing again. And it was, and watching the movie years later, I think the reshoots were much better acting wise. I think I learned from my mistakes and like how, like where I was putting the camera. And I think it was like 20% maybe better the second time. So I'm like, okay. And in retrospect, I'm happy I did that. But it's hard when you work really, really, really hard for a day and then it's just all gone. Like you can't use any of it. So it's all about sound. You got to get the sound right. If the sound's not right,
sound's so important. Do it again. And like, our sound was so great because like he would listen to it, like, you know, as soon as we done something, he would go and listen to the audio and be like, okay, guys, like this is good, we're fine. And that, like, it was just so funny how like the people, I mean, just like the director ruined it for all of us because he was so stubborn and he wouldn't listen to us. And it's
directors can be stubborn.
They can, and it's like when I was like, do you not see these things? And then when you're right in the end, it's just like, and I remember when I had to edit it and I directed half of it, and when I had to put directed by his name, like put that in credits, and I was just like, I don't want him to get credit for this movie. I was like, he was a shit fuck, and he was a bad person. He was a bad person, and literally I was working on it like for just 12 hours a day, just like losing my mind trying to get this thing together, and he was just like, it's my movie. Like, no.
The only time I was like, the only time I was ever really stubborn was when I was halfway through directing a short film in college and the main actor didn't want to do it anymore, and we still had like 4 or 5 more scenes to go, and I had to work that. I think I started promising money by the end. I'm like, because we shot out a sequence, and I'm like, well, there's no movie if you don't continue. I think she thought we were going to do it in a weekend and turn it into like 6 weekends. Like it was kind of it was like a 22-minute film, and it was like a lot of scenes. And and she was like, I think she thought it was going to be just a quick little thing. And then she said to me one day, she was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. And I said, well, we still have 4 more scenes. Like, we can't stop now. So I had to be stubborn there. But we got the footage in the can. The last night, she was so done. And I'm like, just come on, keep going. And when I wrapped, I don't think I ever talked to her again. I said, okay, thank you. Bye. But she came to the premiere and she liked the movie. She came to the premiere. She liked it. So that was good.
Oh, God.
There was a happy ending.
Ours was so bad. I'll send you the one that we did. It was just so bad. I was so done. It was 20 because we had like a 20-minute film, and we were the only group that did 20 minutes actually. And I just got drunk and just like watched it, and I was like, oh my God. And you know, I mean, people did have a fun reaction to ours because like we knew like it wasn't that great. It's super campy, like the editing, the lighting shit, and the acting's not good. But like we're like, we'll just have some fun with it, and people did enjoy that aspect of it. So I was like, at least you know, like a fun reaction.
I'd love to watch that when we're done here. If you have time, you should watch. Go on YouTube and search the title "Lonesome Bridge." Lonesome Bridge. It's my gay film, and I made in college. It's a gay themed film. Really cute guy with his shirt off, Andrew. So I think you'll like it. And it was kind of like my coming out movie. Like as I was making the film, I was starting to tell people that I was gay, and it was like, and I showed it to my father like a few months before I came out to him, and he's watching this movie like, huh. Like it's a very like it's a sweet story of this kid who just has this insane crush on his sweet mate, who's this gorgeous tall drink of water. And it's probably my favorite film I made in college. So it's on YouTube, still on YouTube. It's at like almost a million.
Is it?
Yeah, it's Momentum Films.
Yeah,
almost at. almost
That's
at
almost a million views.
almost a
Yeah.
million views. Hey,
That's
so
awesome.
people have
Good job.
watched it and enjoyed it. So yeah, check that out. That's probably my favorite of my films. I think you'd like that
Mine's
one.
called
That's
The
good.
Call. I think I'll definitely check it out because mine's called The Call, and it's
The
also
Call. Isn't
it's
that the
The
title of
Call.
the Halle Berry movie?
Oh, it is. You're right. And you know, that movie wasn't bad. This one, and it's funny because like this one was it was like Scream. It's just prom night, and I was we had we had to get a script from someone who already like we had to go like a free script place where we could make it, or we could get like like free rights or whatever. But there was one that I wanted to do. What was about this woman who was a taxi driver that who was killing people, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And at first, when you're reading it, you think it's the people that she picks up, you think these two people are actually bad and they're gonna go do something to her, but it's actually and then there's like a quick thing where actually she's the one who kills them, and then she puts their bodies in a trunk, and then she drives around to pick up her next person, and that girl like kind of tracks on to what's happening, and she ends up like figuring it out because there's like blood somewhere like in the car, and then she like gets shot, but then she survives, and it's this whole thing where you go, the lady, the bad woman, the taxi driver, she ends up going to a gas station, knocking this woman out who's a bus driver, putting on their clothes, and then taking the bus of people and driving off with this bus of people.
This is a movie you made or that you want to make?
No. This is the one that I wanted to do.
Okay.
This is the one I wanted to do. But the director was like, no, the director was like, we're doing this one. It's easier. I'm like, well, this one's better. And I was like, involves a woman killing people in a taxi. Like, it's so cool.
So I think this might officially be, Andrew, the first ever episode of Film at 50 where there's more time talking about other things than the movie.
I think so. I think
and that's okay. That's okay.
That's fine.
This isn't some like, if this was The Godfather, I think people would be throwing stuff at me. Like, what the hell's the matter with you?
Oh yeah.
I think Tales from the Crypt, we're just having a chat, we're catching up. We haven't talked in a while. But so let's run down a few more things we liked about the movie. I like the opening. I like kind of the organ playing and the kind of the creep factor, kind of eerie, them walking through the tunnels, and they don't really look like they belong in these tunnels. So it's immediately a sense of mystery, like what's to come. I really like the opening of the movie a lot. I also really like the practical effects of these things. The guy who sees his reflection and screams. That's clearly like makeup on his face. It's not, we're many years before CGI, of course. And what I love that the director, Freddie Francis, does is he never lingers on any of these makeup effects. Like, he shows them just for the right amount of time, and then he cuts away. Like, it's not like we're like pushing in. Like, he could have like pushed in on the guy looking at himself in the reflection on that table, right? So he looks down at the table. Like, he could have like zoomed in. He could have like we could have cut to a close-up of him, like with his eyes open with his face. Like, we just get enough to like see something that we shouldn't, and then it cuts to the next scene. That also happened with the corpse in the third segment with the big teeth. Like, we see it in full for like 2 seconds, and then it cuts away. And I like that. I like that we don't linger on these things. That makes it more powerful.
Less is more.
Less is more.
Less is more in this kind of thing.
Yeah, so I like, those are two things I really like. There was a great sense of dread, even in segments 4 and 5. Nice sense of dread, never moving too quickly. I think they're like, the stories are slow, but kind of have a deliberate pace to them. I like that. And I really like the ending too, the ominous kind of closing. It's kind of spooky at the end. I felt like the movie could have done more with the wraparound. It felt kind of just like House of Drip Blood does something with the wraparound, and it has like a finale at the end. Like, you meet this detective guy in the wraparound, and you spend some time with him after every segment, and then we follow that detective at the end, and it kind of has like, there's like an ending to a story that connects to one of the 5 segments we got before. So that I thought was clever. Whereas this one, it just kind of felt like, okay, we need to like transition from one to the next. Doesn't really, not a whole lot done with it, but that was okay.
Yeah.
Anything else you liked?
I mean, I did. Now, unless I completely mess this up, in the end, I guess like the twist would have been that this is something that these people actually did, correct? Or did I interpret it wrong?
Don't ask me about the end.
Okay.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
you're right.
Yeah.
You were right.
Okay. Yeah. So all right. So yeah. So I did like that aspect where I mean I was like now I'm second guessing everything in my life. But because that kind of made my whole thing with like being confused about the brooch. I was like, I'm confused. I was like, she already has that, so like, is that in her dream as well? Like whatever. But then you're like, oh, and then that to me was like the indicator in the end, like what kind of made it click a little more when I didn't quite understand even right now, was that yeah, like all these things really did happen. Now my question is like,
So you're supposed to believe up until the ending that these are things that could happen to these people,
yes.
but then you find out at the end that this is how they died.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense to me. That's
yes. Yeah, that totally, yeah, it totally did. But then I was just like, I went back and forth. I went back and forth in like whether or not that was the correct ending.
Because doesn't Joan Collins say that? Isn't she asked like, why are you here? And she's like, oh, I stopped my car and I was pulled to this place. Like I felt compelled to come here. Yeah. So I think that's where I'm like, okay, they're dead. Like this is like hell or something. Like this is not like I didn't get a sense of them wandering through these tunnels that this is just reality and they're all just like on their own accord, just walking into these tunnels. Like it feels like these characters have died. Yeah. I think why like surprised me, I guess more so was that I read the description before I watched it and I was like, tales of like what could happen. What could happen. So I went in with that mindset, oh, this is what could happen. That has to be it. And that's why I was like, oh, and then that's why the ending like got me a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that was really cool. And I mean, the man falling into a volcano, it looks like, whatever that was. That part I remember. Yeah, that's at the end, right?
That part was hilarious. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, overall, I really did enjoy it. I mean, it kept me engaged enough throughout each one. And,
I was really surprised and happy to see you give it a 9 out of 10 on Instagram. I was like, oh wow, like I thought maybe you'd give it a polite 7.
No, I think I also like referenced it with the time.
Right, you have to do that too. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, had I seen this in the 70s, I'd be like, yeah, this is pretty cool. And I think that's also the fact that it was in the 70s. And I still was pretty invested in it. Mm-hmm. Can be hard to do because we'll talk about it later. I watched the horrors of
Horror of Frankenstein or Dracula.
Horror of Frankenstein, Dracula.
Okay.
And
Curse of Frankenstein, Horror of Dracula.
Yes, that's it. And I wasn't as invested in that.
Okay, that's like 58. That's older.
It's much older, but I was like, but then I really, I guess maybe the 70s was my vibe, I guess. For that. Oh yeah, like, I don't care.
And what's so great is that, as I've said before, the early years of the 70s not great for horror films. Like the one coming up here I'm excited to talk about for 72 is Last House on the Left. The first film by Wes Craven is coming.
Yeah.
But like every year we get into the 70s, better and better scary film are coming out. Yeah. It starts kind of quiet, and then every year, especially once The Exorcist comes out at the end of 73 and just is a box office phenomenon, then all the studios are like, oh, we want one of those. We want a horror film. And so by 74, 75, we're just going to get a lot more really great horror films. Very few months in this podcast I don't have at least one horror film, because that is my favorite genre. So I'm always looking. There is like on Wikipedia, there's like a page. It's like horror films released in 1972. there's a page on Wikipedia. So I like that page. It's a very good one. So I mean, some other flaws. I mean, as I said, I wish we had more Peter Cushing in this movie, since he is our focus on this final segment. But that's the nature of these things. And this is what I wrote. The problem with anthology horror films, there's not like a slow build to a climax, really. It's kind of like, it's hard when you have 20, 25-minute segments. You're kind of like pulled in, pulled out, pulled in. And it's like, it's not like a typical horror film where it's building to a big finale. And especially since segment 4 and 5 kind of disappoint, there isn't that. So I think, especially in this movie, it's tricky to pull off, even in my favorites, even in Creepshow, even in the House of Drip Blood, because you have to just keep like resituating yourself. Oh, okay, now we're in a different story. Now it's a different person. Okay, different actor. So it's hard to kind of find your rhythm in those movies. And that's always just an issue I have with anthology horror film.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's definitely true. Like unfortunately, like if you have two bag segments, it can change the entire view on the entire movie, which is kind of rough.
Like when you have 5 segments, let's say 3 of them are perfect or amazing, and then the other 2 are terrible. It's like, how do you even review that movie? Because I feel like I would still recommend it if there's enough in it that is worth looking at. But then, like, what if they're out of order? Like, how does that work? So I don't know. The goal is to make these anthology horror films where every segment kicks ass. That's the goal. All right. So my last question about the movie is, so let's say they were to make Tales from the Crypt the movie today, Andrew, what would that look like in 2022? If they took, let's say, whether it's the same 5 stories or 5 different stories from the original like 50s comic book, they were to make this today as a movie, like, what do you think it would look like in 2022? Any idea?
I feel like there's gonna be a lot. This movie was there were some good psychological elements to it for sure. I feel like it's gonna definitely ramp that up as in Scream 5 taught us about elevated horror. Discuss that a little bit. There's definitely gonna be pushing some more of that. I think we get a lot of cameos for sure.
We could do a Scream anthology movie.
Like, 100%. I mean,
we follow characters from the first like 4 films that survived, and we just get like 20 minutes with each one.
I would love that. People are like, they didn't bring Joel back. Yeah, I would love to see Joel again.
Joel, like, I would love to see. Like, I wanted Joel back in the new one. Like, come on, let's bring back some of these.
Yeah, I think there would be many more cameos and more diversity, obviously.
Yes.
Like, a bunch of middle-aged older white men. I'm like, okay, like, I don't care about you anymore.
Yeah, I think that so often on this podcast when I'm watching these films from 71, now 72, and I'm like, and it's just a bunch of old white guys. I'm like, come on, let's come on, guys, let's get some diversity in here. I know it's 50 years ago, but let's make this happen.
So definitely cameos of some pretty fun actors. More diversity. Honestly, I think it probably wouldn't be 5. I would say it'd probably be 4, 3 or 4.
I think 5 is too much. I think you're right.
5 is too much. I think audience would kind of be like, okay, we're kind of bored with this, or it's going to take them anything that was creative enough to make a 5th one seem as good as the other one.
I actually like 3. I like the idea of doing a wraparound story that has a conclusion at the end, and 3 major stories for 25 to 30 minutes each. I think that's a good anthology horror film. Although Creepshow is my all-time favorite, and that's 5 segments. So what are you going to say? And a wraparound with Stephen King's son. Stephen King's son, Joe, now the famous author Joe Hill, who writes great books. He is the little boy in the wraparound segment for Creepshow. Not everyone knows that.
Cool. That's awesome. I no idea.
Of all my recommendations today, Creepshow. Just trust me. Like,
I have it.
One night this week, like, just like put on Creepshow. You will have a blast. It is great.
I will do it 100%.
So I think there's that. Do you have Shudder? Do you have that? The Netflix for horror films. Like, they've been doing Creepshow on Shudder as like a series, like a 45, 50-minute like episode, like a series of films. I think anthology films are really tough to do now. I think the way that people consume content now, I mean, I don't know how any anthology movie could ever make it to theaters at this point. I think that's done. And I feel like because we're consuming our content on Netflix and Shudder and Hulu and all these places, I think the only really way to do it now, unless it's just like a small indie film for Shudder or something, has to be like a series, like where we like a Twilight Zone, where it's like a new series or a new episode each week, or maybe like they drop 10 in one day or something. But I think that's the way. I think the anthology film is kind of dead at this point, outside of some like diehard horror filmmakers who loved these movies as kids, like Creepshow, and want to do it again. I think they'll never be gone for good, but I think for the most part in the 2020s, we're not really going to see these kind of movies anymore. But
I totally agree 100%. And I would talk about like which ones we would pair this with, because there's one that was like, it's kind of in a way with the anthology in a way, but not really. But yeah, I agree. I don't think we're gonna see anything like that. I mean, there's so much to watch now. I mean, it would be so difficult just to even get the funding.
I would love to see in the next few years would be a reboot of Tales from the Crypt, the anthology series, maybe even on HBO, like where they have big budgets, where they get some stars, where they get some good directors, and they
Ryan Murphy doesn't do it,
and it's not Ryan Murphy, and it's Tales from the Crypt with blood, with nudity, with like make it like the old HBO series and get some big stars on it, maybe from TV or whatever, but with some good directors, and like let's bring back the anthology HBO series Tales from the Crypt today. That would be really cool. I would love to see that.
Oh yeah, because I mean, oh my god, my thought is just completely gone.
Tales from the Crypt, 2022.
That would be. I mean, I would definitely watch. And even if they just remade some of the old episodes, I think people would like.
Yeah,
still be.
They wouldn't have to be new stories. They could just do this Christmas one again. Why not?
Like, oh yeah, I would love to see someone add in some stuff to it. Like, why not?
Have like Eli Roth or someone direct the Christmas episode. It'd be fantastic.
Now, I think we talked about the last time. Did you watch the American Horror Stories? Did you watch that? I think we talked about it.
Yeah. No, I haven't. I did watch the new season with Macaulay Culkin. Did you see the new season of American Horror Story? It was so weird.
I did.
The first 5 episodes I thought were some of the best work they've done in years. Like I thought it was phenomenal. And then there was a 6th episode that kind of wrapped up that story. It was like 38 minutes long, and it was so quick, and it was so odd. It was so weird, and that didn't work. Absolutely. And then they added on 4 more episodes of a different story that was like a 50s science fiction kind of thing that didn't work at all. So it was like 5 episodes, the best American Horror Story has been in years, and then ruined it in the 6th episode, and then it had this little sci-fi story for 4 episodes that wasn't very good. So I'm like, no, just keep it to the 5 episodes. And I remember the ending of episode 5 was the perfect place to end the whole thing. Like they like walk by the mom, she's like hunting for blood or something in the woods, and they see her and she sees them, and then they just keep walking. That was the ending of the story. So why have another episode? That just bothered me. Like you can't, like that bothered me. I was like, no, stop it there. Agree. That's it. Stop it.
Well, I feel like that's American Horror Stories. Like they always
go too far.
They always go too far. The last episode is always bad. Apocalypse, I like the way it ended. I think this is a fine ending, and they actually wrapped it up very well. That's the only American Horror Story ending I've ever liked was the Apocalypse one. But yeah, that new one, they just wrapped it up so fast, and it was just dumb. And I was like, wait, like the whole thing was that like the whole point of that, those 5 episodes are like they're secluded at this like little beach town. It's freezing, and then boom, they're in LA, and now everyone's crazy and everyone's eating everyone. I'm like, that wasn't. I was like, don't like that's just stupid. Like
the 6th episode, the 6th episode needed to be longer.
Yeah, it needed to be longer, and it's like introduce some new people coming in, or in the summertime when that town comes back, when the population comes back. I would like to see that. What happens during that time with all these people back in town? Like that could have been the second half of the season instead of I didn't watch the sci-fi thing. Didn't pass it. But American Horror Stories anthology thing was god awful, and I do not recommend it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna watch that. I'm good.
It had a little bit of potential, and then it just like it was just I didn't like any of it. It was just some of them were actually too short, and they were just not interesting, and I gave up. I mean, I finished it, but I was like, I didn't want to finish.
But I'm always on board with American Horror Story. Ryan Murphy has a really nice stable of male actors like Evan Peters and Finn Wittrock that I'm always having a good time. So yeah, even if the show is not quite working at a level, Finn Wittrock and I, Finn Wittrock, I think is how you say his name, and I share the exact same birthday to the day, which I think is kind of
cool.
And I'm like, oh, that's what I would look like if I took better care of myself. Because he was born on the same day. Okay. All right. So that takes us to our final two segments. The first one's the Divine Double Feature. And that's where we pick a movie to pair with Tales from the Crypt, something more modern. So what did you think of for this one? It's kind of hard because it's an anthology movie. Like, how do we pair that with something more recent? What'd you go with?
So I have two choices, but I think my choice is going to be, you mentioned it earlier, was the movie for, I guess, 2020, 2019. Scary Stories.
Oh, that's a great choice. How did I not think of that?
I watched it not that long ago, and I really enjoyed it. And I mean, it tells story, like each character has their own little story from the book. And I was like, oh, like this, yeah, it's very kind of, it's like a mix of anthology, but it's still, you know, one main storyline, but there's little things. And I guess my other option, but I think I mentioned it before, I think It Chapter 1 could be as well, just because each kid had their own fear they were afraid of.
Right.
And you got those segments. But I think Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, to me, I think that would be the best one for sure.
That's a really great choice. I enjoyed that one a lot. I enjoyed that movie a lot. And I, of course, loved that book series as a kid. And I was, when they announced that, first I remember reading it was Del Toro, and I went, oh my God, he's making, he just produced it. He didn't direct it. But he was involved with that. And yeah, that was a really great choice. Was it PG-13? Wasn't it pretty tame?
I believe it was PG-13.
But it was still pretty scary. It was good.
It was so scary. Yeah. It was still PG-13 because it had a little bit of humor to it. And it wasn't, it wasn't too graphic. But they are making a second one, I believe, because it ended on a cliffhanger with the two girls are like, we need to get our friends back because because their friends were like consumed by whatever this thing was. And now they want to go get them back. And it ended with them like driving off to go figure out how to get their friends back.
Yeah, how do they title the sequel? Do they call it Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark 2?
More Scary Stories. I'm gonna look it up right now.
Andrew, real quick, if they call the next Scream 2, I am going to lose my mind.
I think someone said might call it Screams, maybe. But I don't want.
What do you call it? I mean, Halloween Kills. Okay, Screams, Scream again, Scream. I mean, I remember. I'm old enough to remember in the months before Scream 2 came out that they were talking about like potential title possibilities, and finally they just settled on Scream 2. I'm nervous about that one because if they do a new trilogy and it's like Scream 1, Scream 2, Scream 3, I'm out. I'm like, you guys can't do that. I'm still mad about the Scream title. I don't like that. I have every time I bring it up, I have to say 96. I have to say 96 now. It's like, come on.
Well, I think most will say Scream 5, which I think is as easiest.
Yeah,
but I think
we do.
It was kind of funny that they didn't mock themselves in the movie.
They did.
Like Halloween, like calling it Halloween. I was like, when that part came in, everyone is.
They did make fun of it. They did make fun of the name.
Everyone giggled. We're like, oh, that's kind of cute.
So that was good.
I don't know. I tweeted yesterday. It's gonna be called Scream Tokyo Drift, but I don't think that's gonna be it. Unfortunately, I wish it was. It'd be great. But I don't know what's gonna be called, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But my choice is kind of an obvious one. It's a spinoff. It's not super recent, but it's the one kind of spinoff we didn't talk about yet, and that's Tales from the Hood from 1995. Have you heard of this?
Okay.
They did a Tales from the Crypt movie. It's an anthology movie. It's a lot of fun, and it's an African American cast, and it is David Alan Grier and all these great people, and it's bloody and it's fun and it's goofy. Some segments are funnier than others. A couple of them are scary, and it's just a great time. I don't know. I saw it a few years ago for the first time. I think it was on Shudder. It might have been Shudder. But I had a blast with it, and it's very mid-90s. It's kind of cheesy, but it's a lot of fun. So I would recommend, if you've never seen Tales from the Hood, it's also a good one to check out.
And it's funny because I've heard of it for sure.
Yeah,
I've definitely heard of that.
There's not very many anthology horror films with an African American cast, so it's kind of fantastic in that regard, and it's worth a look. And right before Scream in the mid-90s, not a whole lot of great horror films, but that one's a lot of fun from 95. And our final segment, Beyond the Flick, let's just talk briefly about Peter Cushing. What a great career. Looking at his filmography yesterday, I was surprised to see he started acting in films in the late 1930s. He didn't really get involved in horror films until the end of the 50s. So this was an actor who got his start. I think he was on the stage, and he was in Hamlet, the 1948 Oscar-winning film Hamlet by Laurence Olivier, and he did a lot of different kinds of films. It wasn't until he got into that Hammer group of the Hammer Productions, where they were doing Curse of Frankenstein and Horror of Dracula. And then you look at his filmography after like 1960, and it's almost all horror film. Almost all.
What I noticed that, because that's why I watched the
Horror of Dracula.
Horror of Dracula, because I want to see him play Van Helsing.
Yes.
And I saw Christopher Lee was in it, and I was like, oh, because Christopher Lee was also in Star Wars as well, which in the 1, 2, and 3 Star Wars.
Oh right, yeah. Christopher Lee's in the prequels. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh, he and Christopher Lee had a lot in common. So I was like, oh, I want to watch that one just to see them battle it out.
They were in a lot of movies together. Like those two kind of went hand in hand. You know the story about Donald Pleasance for Halloween, right? Like who they went to first?
No, did they go to? They
went to Christopher Lee first.
Okay.
He passed, and then they went to one other actor before they went to Donald Pleasance, who was the second person.
Okay. Interesting.
Who was the second person they went to, Andrew, before they went to Pleasance?
Oh my God. Was it Peter Cushing?
Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing said no,
funny.
And then they went to Pleasance. So and Christopher Lee later said it was one. I think he said it was the biggest regret of his career was that he turned down Halloween. He said I would have had a new stage of my film career if I had done that movie, and he regretted it later. I think he told Deborah Hill years later, like they bumped into each other at a conference or a convention or something, and he said the biggest regret I have in my career was saying no to Halloween. That was a mistake. And I think about that. I'm like, Christopher Lee would have been good. None of them would have been Donald Pleasance. He was perfect.
No,
so it worked out.
Great for it.
But yeah, Peter Cushing, he worked in films into the 80s. He's apparently in Top Secret from 84 with Val Kilmer, that spoof movie directed by the guys who did Airplane. So his career goes from the 30s to the 80s, which is really cool. One of his first films was a Laurel and Hardy movie called A Chump at Oxford, which is really great. I love that Peter Cushing is in a Laurel and Hardy slapstick comedy in like the late 30s, like 1940, that period. And then he's in Hamlet, and then he's Van Helsing in Horror of Dracula, and Victor Frankenstein in Curse of Frankenstein. And then he's in all these really cool horror films of the 60s and 70s. And then, of course, he's in what is, for me, his best movie, and that's 1977 Star Wars, of course. He's a part of Star Wars. Any of these other films you looked at or know about?
I mean, I remember him in Star Wars for sure, because they also in the newest and then
they recreated him in Rogue One.
Yeah, I remember
that. Controversial.
I remember people were not.
That was kind of weird.
It looked really
good.
Real when I saw it. He looked
very
great,
good.
But I know people were a little upset about that for sure.
Like, do we consider that a performance of Peter Cushing's in Rogue One? I wouldn't go that
exactly. I know. Well, that's all. I was like, oh. When I was looking at his character, and I'm not like the biggest Star Wars person. I enjoy the movies, but I haven't really rewatched many of them. But when I saw that was his character, I was like, oh, he was the character they reanimated for the newest one. And then I just remember his character. I was like, okay, yeah, he's the jerk.
But that's a really cool kind of late career role, and nobody knew what Star Wars was going to be in 76.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like, I don't think Peter Cushing was like, "Ooh, I'm going to get in on this. Like, this is going to be big." Like, I probably, it was just a job. He took it, and he had no idea that it was going to be the phenomenon it was. But I think like for Star Wars fanatics who love and adore the original Star Wars, you know, Peter Cushing had an incredible career that goes far beyond that one movie. And I advise everybody to check it out, especially his horror films like Curse of Frankenstein, Horror of Dracula, House at Drip Blood, and Tales from the Crypt. We have reached the end, Andrew. We've done it. Thanks so much for being back on Film at 50 today. I would love for you to tell us where our listeners can find you online. If you have anything to promote, let us know.
Yeah, I'm on social media, pretty much all of it. ARCam194 is my username. Not too much to promote. I can't think of anything. I know I'm working on some, right now I'm working on some I love making cards for people, like graphic designing them.
Cool.
And so I've decided to kind of make now my own and possibly sell some. So I've made a few. I made a Scream one recently, and so I'm working on doing some designs just for like horror movie cards. I also have this idea for funny sympathy cards, which I think could be a very interesting thing. It's super. Some of them are super inappropriate, and I was like, these could never sell, but there's your opportunity. And so yeah, I'm working on expand. I love grading cards, and I'm gonna make some of my own. So maybe the next time I'm on the podcast, I'll be like, oh guys, go to my website.
Oh, there you go.
So I think I'm gonna make plenty of movie references. There's just so many that I would love to make, and especially horror movie ones. And so that could be a fun thing to mention next time.
Yeah.
I think the name is gonna be Carded, like CARDED, like we got carded. So that is so far the plan. But
cool.
So this is the leading up. So hopefully the next time when we discuss another movie, I'll be able to say it. So.
Yeah, we are doing a month of terror in June. There are 4 horror films I'm highlighting for the entire month of June. There's some big ones. So yeah, so I'll send you that list, and if there's any that pop out to you, I'd love to have you back.
Absolutely.
All right. So thanks for being here, Andrew. Thanks to all of you for listening. You can find us online at filmat50.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And check out my new YouTube channel, Brian Rowe Video, where I do videos on Oscar races, videos on the history of film. I also have one about Scream. I don't know if you saw, I did 25 reasons why I love Scream. So that's all on Brian Rowe Video. Check that out. And until next time, remember, 50 never looked this good.